Hello all, Ram McClurkin here, Sports Sedan TV. So the podcast you're going to listen to today was an interview I did with Keith Carling at Queensland Raceway last year during the Nationals. We grabbed 20 minutes, hopped into John Goulet's transporter and did a quick interview. The sound quality is a little bit up and down, so I do apologise, the phone rings. But I thought it was too good not to put on the podcast. Keith Carling is a legend, and it was a real honour to chat to him. And I hope you gain some insight into Keith and the very infamous 300ZX that was very quick at Bathurst. Enjoy, guys. Okay, we're here with Keith Carling. Now, he's a humble man, I think, but he's a bit of a legend for some of us. Keith had the 300ZX twin turbo, and Keith has graciously agreed to sit down and have a bit of a chat about it. So, how you doing, Keith?
Good, Ren.
And where do we want to start with this car that, in some of our eyes, especially the Nissan guys, but the Sports Sedan guys, is a bit of a mythical car in some ways. How did it all begin?
Are we talking the 300Z?
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. We had the RX-7 at Sandown. And I had a friend who was actually a Nissan dealer in Dubbo, and he was one of the sponsors. And he said, if you're going to Sandown, you need to catch up with the guy who is the Nissan Motorsport manager, who used to run, Fred Gibson stuff and all that sort of thing. I can't remember his name. He's a really, really nice guy. And anyway, he came over and he said, "Why have you got a Mazda with a Nissan engine in it?" And I said, "Oh, well, because we've built quite a few Mazdas over the years, and we've always had turbo engines in probably since 1988, right through till 91. And I said, well, the cost really, we're only a budget operation, and we wanted a turbo engine. And he said, well, there's a new 300ZX coming into Australia shortly. Would you be interested in building one of those? And I said, well, yes, okay, I suppose I'd like to. And they said, well, there's 3 cars, evaluation cars in Australia now. We can't sell them because they haven't got ADRs. And so we're going to throw them in the crusher. Before we throw it away, would you be interested in getting the fiberglass mould and what have you from a 300ZX? And I went, yeah, that would be interesting because Anyway, so Barry Campbell, who I'm here with today, I said to Barry, because he used to do all my fiberglass work, he flew down to Melbourne and Nissan's plant him with one of these 300ZXs and did a full body mould for the 300ZX.
And had you seen a 300ZX
No.
when they brought it up?
Nobody.
You had no idea what it was going to look like. Obviously, you knew what the earlier Zs were, but there was a bit of a departure with the 300 in the body shape.
Yes, it was. And anyway, we thought, oh, this is going to look pretty nice. So, and then we got on to Phil Ryle had been building some of the Mazda stuff. Barry used to build the chassis for the Mazda, and then Phil Ryle would do all the running gear and whatever. And we thought, if we're going to do it properly, let's do it properly. So, thought, okay, we're going to build a complete new car. And obviously, Nissan were interested in keeping the V6 engine and all that sort of thing. So, the chap from Nissan said, look, if you want to go to America, here's the contact details for Nismo in California, who are doing all the IMSA cars and what have you. Well, okay, that sounds okay. So we went to America and met these guys, and they were really, really nice guys, and told him what we were doing. anyway, so we ended up, we got some parts for the V6 that were obviously you needed to keep the thing alive.
Yep.
And we wanted, we got a lot of stuff from that. And then Phil decided that we needed the right turbos, so he sourced a couple of ex-Renault Formula One turbos, beautiful little turbos. And anyway, so we put the thing together. It took a couple of years, and we finally put the thing together, and it ended up being quite a weapon.
And so the motor, I know a lot of people were like, it just had an IMSA motor in it, but it sounds like it didn't. It had like some IMSA parts, some F1 parts, and some stock parts.
There were stock parts,
Yeah.
but there was lots of bits from America,
Yeah.
that which would keep it
Going.
living.
Yeah.
So, but it was very good in those days. Very, very early days for the injection and what have you. And in fact, when we were talking to the guys in America, we ended up, we were talking with Richard Bendel, Richard Orbit, who was part of just the early days doing the fuel injection type stuff. And so they actually, through us, got onto him to getting some of their stuff through their stuff as well. But yeah, it was very agricultural in
modern terms.
Because we had like a knob to turn the boost up and things like that. And yeah, it was quite agricultural. But anyway, ultimately it did go very well.
And so I suppose it's okay to say now because you're not racing the car anymore, but what sort of power did you have? What sort of boost were you running to make that power? Was it on the edge of hand grenading all the time, or did you run it quite conservatively?
Well, I was running about 2 bar, and the car weighed about 1,100 kilos, and I reckon when we ran at Bathurst, those 2 races in Bathurst in the championship, I think it was 1,000 horsepower. Yeah, something like that. The issue there was obviously that the transmission was a bit of an issue because we had a DG3, I think was the gearbox, and the second race in after Bathurst, you could hear it, the ground opinion was just roaring.
Yep.
And so we thought, okay, we're going to need another gearbox for sure, something a bit stronger.
Yeah. And
back in the day, this was back in the day when the Indy cars were running in Surfers Paradise. And John Pollard and Graham Whincup and I used to run through Bob Jane. When Bob Jane was running the Indy back in those days, we used to run the sports cars and sports sedans, etc. And so I knew John pretty well. So John had a lot of contacts in America, and he got on to Carl Haas and said, "Oh, look, we need a better gearbox." So we had organised a new gearbox. When the Indy cars came over, we put it into one of their containers and brought it in, and we just took the ute up and and of course, in those days, you had to take everything back.
Yeah.
All the American stuff had to go back. So we got a VGC, really not, money. And we put, they said, we've got a bit of a worry here because we need to take the weight.
Yeah.
So we ended up with about 6 or 8 cartons of 4X gold.
that took up the weight.
Exactly.
The Americans could sample some Queensland beer and went on the
return. And they rather enjoyed that. So we got the VGC, and then of course after that it was
much better. And you ran, was there 1 or 2 events that you ran at Gold Coast Indy with the 300?
2, I think 2.
And what was like we were going back to Gold Coast this year, what was it like back then? they're great to watch on the fuzzy YouTube videos that exist, but what was it like being there in that?
Really difficult. Like, it gets so hot. It was, so hot, and we didn't have the brakes on the car. We thought we had great brakes, but compared to what we see today, it was nothing like that. So everyone ran out of brakes. The engines overheated, and then the tyres went off. All these sorts of things because they were longer races.
Yeah.
So they were very, very tricky, those races.
So as exciting as they were to watch for us, it was quite a challenge back then.
Absolutely. They were probably the hardest races, those Indy ones, for sure.
And so with Bathurst, we touched on Bathurst just before. I think we were talking earlier, you up until recent times, you still had the sports sedan lap record there, is that correct?
Yeah, 92 I think it was.
And so back in 92, what sort of lap time were you doing? What sort of, people love to talk about top speed. What sort of speeds were you reaching?
Well, they had the radar set up. The police had the radar down Conrad Straight, and we were doing 315 as you go into the chase.
Oh wow! So if it's potentially a bit more than that by the time.
Well, whatever, but it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And again, another funny little thing. Poor Phil Ryle, who built the car, he was really concerned about the car getting over the air. So, and so he ended up putting a big lump of metal in underneath, putting the car down.
So were you finding it quite light in the front?
I didn't know.
You thought it was fine?
It was fine, yeah. I thought it was great. It was very exhilarating.
And back then, I suppose, were you just putting the biggest wing and the biggest front splitter that you could run? Was there any aero testing, or was it just...
Look, we had one practice session and then into the race.
Yeah.
And so really we just set it up what we thought it might happen. When we did the practice session qualifying, the car was bouncing all over the place, so we had to reset the shocks and all those sorts of things, but everything else, that was all we could do. But no, the car actually went, what you can see from the video from back in the day, the car actually went brilliantly well.
And is it true, I heard the rumour that after race 1, you may have been told quite near to slow down in race 2 to make it more of a race, or is that not true? Or are you pleading fifth or whatever it is?
Oh, really? I knew the diff was probably having issues, so I did whacked it down a bit.
So it wasn't that you were asked to slow down. You actually just needed to be a little bit more conservative.
Yeah. Well, I did what I wanted to do in the first race. I think we won by the length of the trade or something or other, and I thought, okay, we've done that. We'll just go back and do quieten it down a bit.
Yeah. Now, with that car, did you ever get to have a good attack at the championship?
Not really, because it really wasn't up and running. I think I can't remember. This is back in the 90s. I know the car was only really still, was just really just starting to put it together. And then, in the end, I it was a business situation. I had in that particular point, I ended up having the ability to take over the whole franchise for AB Jennings in the western New South Wales, and it was going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
So I basically said, look, okay, I'll just put racing aside and work for a few years. Kerry said, if you want to sell it, and I thought about it, and I said, yes, okay, well, I'll sell it. That's why I ended up buying it in, 93 or whatever it was.
So, again, another rumour that was floating around was that the car was banned. And I thought that for a long time, but it sounds like that was never the case.
Look, there was people who were a little bit upset about it. But it was quite, it was eligibility wise, it was fine. There was nothing wrong with all that. But I think when I sold the car and then Kerry decided to put a chev in it. Everybody said, "Oh, it's let it all quieten down."
Without going too much of it into the current situation that we have at the moment from a similar type of car in a way, not the same, but another Nissan turbocharged going very fast at Bathurst, and obviously that's got people talking. Is it sort of funny to think that 92 that happened and it's taken all this time for a turbo car to start showing its potential? What's your sort of general thought on that? Is that funny, or do you think it's...
Oh, well, he had the issue, the guy from Tasmania, he had the issue that I had, which had just tear the tyres off.
Yeah.
And that was obviously his issue as well. So that, if we'd had, traction control and all sorts of things, so the car would probably go a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But I don't think, it wasn't even a chassis car, I don't think.
No, it's not. It's a floor-pan car.
So, I'm not surprised that they did it. And it was good doing all the things.
Are you surprised it's taken this long, though? Because, I understand that back then it was quite early technology in the turbo-injected sort of world, but it's taken this long for it to sort of show that turbo could be quite threatening in the class. Like, that's a big
yes,
gap.
but see, I always knew that a quick turbo car was going to be very good. Next car.
Yeah.
It's a classic example. And, it's a disappointing that Nick's had so many issues, because I think that car is definitely a winning car with just the FJ20 on it. So, no, I always thought it was going to be a quick car. But you're right, I think it is surprising that it's taken this long.
Yeah. So there was a lot of talk, there's been a lot of talk online about where your actual car is right now. And I know that Kerry purchased it off you, and he built a second car based off your car, is that correct?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I know my car, Phil Ryle took the turbo engine out and put the chev in it. After that, I'm not too sure what happened after that. I know it basically ended up with Graham Bailey, Chicken Man.
Yes.
And his son, I think, ran it. I know that was that was pretty much the car with the chev in it. But I think it's moved on from that as well, so I'm not too sure.
Because it then went to, now Anthony McCready has it, and from that's where it sort of gets a bit interesting. I know the motor, I had a gentleman who runs like one of those prototype cars, and he has the actual motor, but not the turbos. We don't know where the turbos went, but I know that whenever I posted it online, there's a fair few opinions and fairly people that are very confident that they know where it is, but supposedly, I think the strongest thing I've heard is the chassis was remade, copied and strengthened, and the original chassis may have ended up at the tip or something like that.
So I don't know. I really don't know. And as far as the turbos are concerned, and again, it was a wild rumour that somebody told me that they had gone to Rockhampton or something like that, on a speedway car or something, but I really don't know. I don't know.
So I suppose the 300 lives on in little bits and pieces in various cars, and the myth has grown beyond what it was, yeah? Is there any sort of things finishing up, like, that you would like to let everyone know about this 300? What was was there any quirky things, or?
It wasn't quirky, it was just a magnificent car, and it was fabulous to drive. Absolutely fantastic to drive. It was, imagine, 300 k's down at Conron Straight. And it took a long time for even the supercars or anybody to get that speed. So I was pretty excited with all that. I know, it's quite funny because with the first race, when I brought the car back in, Phil and I had put so much effort into building that car. We hugged each other. It was really quite emotional because we knew what the car was like and what it could do, and when we did that first race, I was just,
It showed everything that you guys had envisaged and planned and thought that it could do. It showed that it was capable of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing car.
Well, I can't thank you enough for having a chat with us and for building such an iconic sports sedan. I think that it will forever be one of those cars in the class that stands out and has such admiration and respect. And so I think that's pretty amazing, this class with so many great builds and fantastic cars. So thank you very much.
Not a problem, Rad. Appreciate it.
Dives into the chase for the final time.
So the battle within a battle. Kerry Bailey will be happy with second place. That gives him the Australian Sports Sedan Championship for 1992.
Coming down, putting a lap on one of the slower cars right at the end of Subaru Straight. And Keith Carling in the Nissan gets out to go on and take the checkered flag. Barely over Kerry Bailey. Des Wall finishes back there in third place. And that was a very entertaining sports sedan 5-lapper here at Mount Panorama. And the punters thought that was fabulous.